Welcome, sleepy traveler. You've arrived at a quiet space made just for you. My name is Valarie, and I am here to guide you gently into rest, to help ease your mind, soften your body, and drift you toward a peaceful, uninterrupted sleep. Whether your day was long or your thoughts feel a little too loud tonight, let this be your permission to slow down, to breathe, and to simply be. There's nothing more to do now. Just allow my voice to be your guide as we begin this gentle journey toward deep, nourishing rest. If you're new here, subscribe for sleep content like this, and like this video if you find it enjoyable. Take a slow, gentle breath in and allow yourself to arrive here in this moment. Feel the air enter your body, cool and calm, filling you with a quiet sense of presence. As you exhale, release the weight of the day, letting it dissolve into the soft air around you. Notice how even one breath can begin to soften the edges of your thoughts. Notice how your body begins to respond, settling a little more deeply into stillness. You do not need to rush. The night is yours, and it asks nothing of you but to rest. You have done enough. You are enough. And now it is time to allow yourself to drift toward peace. Breathe in softly, feeling the rise of your chest. Breathe out slowly, like a gentle sigh that melts tension away. Again, inhale peace. Exhale, release. With each breath, you are stepping further into stillness. Imagine the breath as a wave upon the shore. It rolls in gently as you inhale, carrying freshness and ease. It retreats as you exhale, pulling away the stress you no longer need. Each wave is soft, steady, and endlessly returning. You are floating on this rhythm now, carried safely upon the tide of your breath. Feel the surface beneath you supporting your entire body. There is nothing you must hold up. There is nothing you must carry. The earth itself holds you. Let yourself be carried. Let yourself release. Bring your attention to your shoulders and notice how they feel. If they are holding even the smallest tension, invite them to soften now. Feel the muscles melt, sliding down your back into ease. Notice your arms, heavy yet comfortable, surrendering to gravity. Your hands open, each finger relaxed and loose. Even the tips of your fingers let go. Your face softens. The small muscles around your eyes release. Your jaw loosens, your lips resting gently apart. Your forehead smooths, as if brushed by a quiet hand of comfort. Every part of your face is calm, serene, still. Feel the weight of your body sinking deeper into comfort. Your chest is calm. Your stomach softens. Your legs are heavy yet at ease. Your feet let go of every last bit of effort, each toe melting into rest. From head to toe, you are safe to release. Now let your awareness drift gently toward your thoughts. Perhaps they are still moving quickly, circling from one place to another. Do not chase them. Do not try to force them still. Simply observe them as though you are watching clouds drift across a wide sky. Some clouds may linger, others may pass quickly. Each thought is only a cloud. You are the sky, vast, open, unshaken. Now imagine a soft meadow unfolding around you. The grass is tall, swaying gently in the cool night breeze. The stars above shimmer like scattered lanterns in a wide, endless sky. The air is crisp, fresh, carrying the faint fragrance of blossoms. You take a step forward onto this meadow path, feeling it welcome you with ease. Each step is soft, soundless, carrying you deeper into calm. The path glows faintly as though guiding you toward rest. You do not need to know where it leads. You only need to trust that it carries you home to stillness. With each step, your body grows heavier, your mind quieter. In the distance, you hear the sound of water, It is a small stream flowing with endless gentleness. You walk toward it, unhurried, your breath matching the rhythm of the water. When you reach it, you kneel and dip your hand into the cool stream. The water is soothing, cleansing, washing away all that you no longer need. You let it carry away every worry, every lingering thought. The stream accepts it all and leaves you lighter. You sit beside the stream, listening to its soft murmur. It feels like a lullaby written just for you. The stars reflect upon the surface, glowing as if they are watching over you. In this quiet place, everything is safe. In this quiet place, everything is gentle. In this quiet place, everything is still. Allow the night to hold you. Allow the stars to comfort you. Allow the stream to soothe you. You are not alone here. The night surrounds you with care, with warmth, with quiet peace. Let your breath deepen once more. Inhale slowly, gathering calm. Exhale fully, releasing all that no longer serves you. You are lighter with each breath. You are calmer with each breath. You are drifting further into ease. Feel a soft glow forming in your heart. Sometimes a life changes because you open the wrong drawer on the right day. I was supposed to be organizing laminated signs and stacks of paper cups in the community center's storage closet, not stumbling across something that would tilt the floor under my feet. On Tuesdays, I work the afternoon shift at the Maple Street Community Center, which smells like old gym mats and lemon cleaner, and sometimes, when the after-school program is in full swing, popcorn and glue sticks. I sign for shipments, point parents toward the multi-purpose room, explain the difference between pickleball and badminton for the 1,000th time, and try not to think about the version of myself that might exist somewhere else. One who already knows what she wants, who isn't improvising an entire life like an endless first draft. I'm good at being kind. I like that about me. It's the clarity I'm missing. So there I was, shoulder deep in a closet that could have doubled as a time capsule, with the angle of the late afternoon sun cutting through the high, small window and striping the concrete floor. Somebody had stacked folding chairs along the wall and then forgotten them. I was trying to make room for another 3 boxes of donated craft supplies, the kinds of pom-poms and pipe cleaners that breed in dark corners, when I saw the wooden drawer. It was tucked behind the institutional gray file cabinets, no bigger than a bread box and much older, the kind of wood that turns honey gold with age. It shouldn't have been there. Nothing in that closet had any reason to be beautiful. I probably could have ignored it, chalked it up to another piece of weird community center archaeology, except for the little brass slot on the front, the kind you could slide a label into. Inside the slot, on a scrap of brown cardstock, someone had written in careful block letters, "Dream Drawer." I sat back on my heels and stared. In the hall I could hear Mrs. Sanchez corralling her line dancing class, counting over the music in Spanish, laughter puncturing the beat. In the kitchen, the ancient refrigerator thumped like a slow heart. Dream drawer. The phrase made me feel suddenly as if I were very young again, and someone had dared me to jump from a dock into a lake at dusk. I wiped my hands on my jeans and reached for the thin brass handle. It stuck at first, then rasped outward. The smell that rose up was papery, a little sweet. Inside there were slips of paper, hundreds of them, it seemed at first glance, folded and crumpled and creased, some yellowed at the edges. A few were on ruled notebook paper, some on the corners of flyers, one on the back of an index card with the words "Bake Sale" ghosting through. "Okay," I whispered, though no one else was there. I glanced over my shoulder because this felt like something private, like I was opening a diary I didn't own. But the hallway was empty. Somewhere a basketball thumped. I picked up the first slip my fingers touched. I wish someone would leave flowers on my porch. The handwriting was tidy and careful. I could see the writer pausing after each word, the way the line dipped at the end, shy. I put it down and picked up another. I want to learn how to dance without feeling stupid. This one had been scribbled quickly. The stupid had been written and then written over again, as if the person had been angry with themselves for writing it and tried to erase it with ink. I hope I'm not always this lonely. No flourish, just small block letters that left a tiny gap between each word, as if loneliness required a space even in sentences. I held 3 strangers' voices in my hands, and something warm and aching moved through my chest. I dug deeper. I read wishes that were whimsical and tender and sometimes almost funny in their accidental specificity. I want my dog to stop being afraid of thunder. I want to see the ocean before I turn 60. I want to forgive my sister and not feel like I'm losing. I want to plant tomatoes and have them actually be tomatoes and not those sad marble things I grew last summer. There were a few folded with the careful corners of origami, some crumpled and then smoothed, like whoever wrote them had almost not put them in the drawer at all. I couldn't tell how old the drawer was. The notes didn't carry dates. The handwriting belonged to a choir of different hands. I kept returning to the label, Dream Drawer. Had someone started this? A program, a game, a therapy exercise? I could imagine Miss Carroll, who used to run the senior lunch program, and had the kind of voice that could convince a room full of 90-year-olds to try yoga in their chairs. But Miss Carroll moved away last winter, and the lunch program is a potluck now. Everyone bringing something and pretending not to judge anyone else's casseroles. I reached for one more note. It was folded twice and torn along the top edge, as if someone had ripped it from a notebook. When I smoothed it flat, the paper made a soft sigh. I just want to feel like someone sees me. The words were simple, but they didn't feel small. My throat tightened. I wasn't expecting my own reflection in black ink. I sat there on the concrete floor, hip meeting concrete, the slip of paper in my palm. And the embarrassing thing is, I wanted to cry a little, because I knew that feeling too well. Moving through a day like a ghost in a friendly town, smiling and nodding and stapling flyers to bulletin boards and holding doors for people, and then going home to a studio where the only light was the fridge when I opened it. I pressed the heel of my hand against my sternum, as if I could press back the swell. There was a dust bunny drifting along the edge of the file cabinet. The late sun colored the drawer's wood the color of honey tea. I thought wildly of shutting the drawer and pushing it back where it had been and telling no one. Some doors, once opened, can't be closed again. I think I knew that already, even as I sat there pretending to decide whether to tug the drawer all the way out. "Lacey?" Kyle's voice floated down the hall. He's the program coordinator, younger than me by a couple of years, but somehow always in charge of everything like he was born holding a clipboard. "You almost done? We've got the teen chess club at 4 and they want the mural panels out." 2 minutes, I said, my voice too bright. I slipped the note, the one about being seen, back into the drawer as if that could somehow make the moment obedient. I smoothed the pile a little. I slid the drawer shut with a careful click and tugged the file cabinet forward, angling it so that the drawer retreated, vanishing back into the shadows it had come from. But of course, it didn't vanish from me. The rest of my shift was a blur of routine. I taught Mr. Yates how to use the new coffee machine, which is so user-friendly that it takes a 10-minute tutorial and 3 buttons to get a cup of coffee. I found the mural panels behind the broken foosball table. I called the maintenance guy about the flickering lights in the hallway, and he said, "It's the ballast. like I'd know what that meant, and promised to come by next week. I watched the door during chess club, where the kids whispered strategies like they were plotting heists. My body went through its practiced movements, but my mind kept drifting like a balloon on a long string. I felt the slip of paper under my skin. After closing, I walked home along streets that were overly familiar. The stain on the sidewalk from the maple tree sap that never quite washed away. The chalked hopscotch grid in front of 12B that never lined up with the actual squares. The bakery that smelled like cinnamon even after hours. I passed porches that faced the street like polite listeners, and wondered which one had belonged to the person who wanted flowers. I wondered if the person who wanted not to feel stupid while dancing had ever tried, if they had found a place with the lights low enough. In my studio, I put my keys in the chipped bowl by the door, fed the three-legged plant on the windowsill a trickle of water, and leaned my forehead against the cool glass. The streetlight across the way came on with a soundless flick. Somewhere a neighbor laughed. I took out my phone, opened the Notes app, and typed, "Dream drawer." I just want to feel like someone sees me. I tried to imagine the hand that had written that. Try it if you can. Pick a face out of a crowd and give it the voice of a note. I saw a dozen faces, then 100. This is what I'm good at, I think. Letting other people's stories bloom inside me until I can feel the petals against my ribs. The problem is, I have no idea what to do with the bouquet. But that night, while my tea cooled on the windowsill, and my dinner was an apple and a spoonful of peanut butter and a graham cracker eaten standing up, an idea arrived, not exactly fully formed, but persistent. I could do something. I wasn't sure what something meant yet. I just knew that not doing anything felt like the first option toward more loneliness, mine and someone else's. And if I'm honest, I was tired of my own loneliness being the only thing I noticed. The next day I went in early, the sky still tender with morning. The key scratched in the lock, the metal bar across the door clanged back. The lobby smelled like clean floors and a faint memory of popcorn. I took the broom and the dustpan and the pretense of chores and went to the storage closet. This time I didn't hesitate. I moved the file cabinet, a careful inching with my palms braced against its heavy side, and pulled the drawer out into the light. I read more notes. I couldn't help it. It felt like being invited, and also like an intrusion. I kept telling myself the person who created this meant for the notes to be seen. Why else label a drawer a dream drawer? Some slips were so simple they made my heart tilt. I want to sleep through the night. I want a friend. I want to believe again. Some were oddly practical. I want to learn to change a tire. One said, I want to wear the yellow dress even though my mother told me it wasn't my color. A little flare of defiance burned right there in black pen. When the front door opened and footsteps echoed down the hallway, I flinched and shut the drawer like I was hiding something illegal. It was just Kyle, whistling and balancing coffees in a cardboard holder like a very local hero. He held one out to me. "For you," he said. "The good kind. I went past Porter's." "Thank you," I said, trying very hard to look as if I hadn't just been reading other people's hearts in a closet. He eyed the metal scrape marks on the floor. "Did you move the cabinet?" I thought about lying and then decided I was probably the worst liar alive. "Yes? I mean, it was a little wonky. I straightened it. The mural panels were behind it." "Right on," he said, already half gone, checking his watch. "We've got the job fair at 9, then the toddlers, then the senior yoga. If the dance class lady calls about the rental again, tell her Saturday's booked, but we've got Friday. Oh, and Mr. Alvarez will bring the sound system. Don't let him lift it. He insists on lifting it, but we don't have the paperwork for that kind of heroism. I'll stand between him and the speakers with my body," I promised. He saluted with his coffee and went toward the front desk. Beneath my relief, something else was building. I took the dream drawer to the office, where the staff keeps the good pens and the stapler that never jams, and the printer that only jams if you look at it wrong. I pulled a stack of blank index cards out of the supply cabinet, the ones we use for name tags at events. I printed "Dream Drawer" on the top of one, the way the label on the drawer looked. Then I taped the index card to the front of a small shoebox and put it on the corner of the front desk, next to the little dish of community center keychains. I found a cup and filled it with pens. Then, under Dream Drawer, I wrote, "Write a wish, a hope, a dream. Fold and tuck." Kyle raised his eyebrows. "New thing?" "Just trying something," I said, like it was nothing. "Maybe it'll be nice. People like writing things down." He shrugged and slid a pen behind his ear in solidarity. "Sure. People like confetti made of feelings." By noon there were 3 slips in the box. One was from a kid I could tell from the bubble letters that said, "I want a puppy." Another said in rushed, slanted cursive, "I want my back not to hurt all the time." The third made me smile. "I want to be brave enough to sing karaoke." I put them in the wooden drawer in the office, like ministering to a small altar. It felt ritualistic, maybe the way some people feel when they light a candle. And yet, a question kept tapping at me. What are you going to do with all of this? Are you just collecting them? Is that enough? That afternoon, Mrs. Flores came in with a pot of pozole she'd made for the seniors who were trying yoga, because nothing says downward dog like a hearty lunch waiting afterward. She stood at the front desk and told me about her granddaughter's science fair project. A volcano again, of course. And her eyes slid to the little shoebox. She tapped the cup of pens. "What is this?" she asked. "An experiment," I said. "You can write anything, anonymous or not. I wanted to add, I'll see it, I'll see you. But that felt like saying too much. She nodded, considered, and then took a card. She looked around, laughed at herself, and tucked the card into her sweater sleeve like a secret. Later, when no one was looking, she slipped it into the box. When she'd gone, I collected the new slips like a small harvest. I closed the office door, sat down at the desk, and unfolded them, palms careful. I want to pass my citizenship test. I want to call my brother even though we didn't speak at Mama's funeral. I want to take a painting class with the nice girl at the desk. Maybe her name is Lila? I tried not to snort out loud. Close. I sat back and let a smile spill across my face because something inside me was waking up. It wasn't just empathy, though that hums through me like electricity most days. It was the sudden, sharp impulse to do, like a bird turning midair because the wind changed. I wish I could say I made a strategic plan, that I wrote a list with checkboxes and timelines. I did what I always do when I'm not sure what I want. I started with what I could hold. That evening, a little before sunset, I walked past the florist on my way home. The bell on the door sang when I stepped inside, and everything smelled like cut green stems and roses. B, who runs the shop, leaned on the counter with floral tape stuck to 3 fingers. She's about my age and always says hi to me even though we've never had a real conversation, the kind that requires sitting down. I blurted, "Do you ever do anonymous deliveries?" "Like secret admirer stuff?" she asked, and one corner of her mouth tucked up. "More like secret kindness?" I said, which was possibly the most lacy sentence that's ever left my mouth. She tilted her head in a considering way. "We can do drop-offs and leave them on porches," she said. "People do that for birthdays or apologies." I pulled out my wallet. "What's the least expensive thing that still feels like flowers?" She made me a small posy of daisies and greenery tied with twine. It felt both modest and brave in my hands, the way a first sentence of a letter feels before you decide whether to keep writing. I paid for it and carried it carefully down Maple Street until I stood at the base of a porch with a painted blue railing. I didn't know whose porch it was. That's not the point. It could have been anyone's. It had to be someone's. I left the daisies on the second step, where they'd be seen from the door. And as I walked away, my heart did a hummingbird thing in my chest because I had not only read a wish, I'd answered a small one. Maybe not the right porch, not the exact person, but I had folded a piece of the world and asked it to fit. That night I lay awake, the warm nighttime air stretching the curtains. The words from the drawer played across the ceiling. I thought of the person who wanted to dance without feeling stupid. I could tape signs around town: community dance night, low light, No judging, only joy. I thought of karaoke courage and set a reminder to ask Mr. Alvarez if we could borrow the portable mic system on a Friday evening for Sing Terribly, Sing Loud. I thought of Mrs. Flores's card about the citizenship test, of calling brothers, of yellow dresses. Ideas bloomed like the nighttime jasmine by the community garden fence, fragrant and a little intoxicating. But the line that kept coming back was, I just want to feel like someone sees me. I have known invisibility intimately, how it can make a body feel like a smudged window. I also know what a kind cashier can do in 2 sentences. How a bus driver's nod can reconstruct you, molecule by molecule. If someone had left me daisies on my porch last year when my father was sick and I was commuting between the hospital and the community center in a fog of fear, I might have remembered to eat dinner more often. I might have called my best friend back sooner instead of pretending I was fine. No one did, and that's no indictment of the world. It's just something I won't forget. The next morning I wrote a new card for the shoebox. Need help wishing bigger? Circle yes and add a phone number. I'll help. It felt thrilling and terrifying, the way turning on a porch light in a storm feels both a beacon and a dare. People circled yes, not many at first. Enough. I sat on the floor of the office, again, the office. Maybe all the important moments in my life are going to involve scuffed floors and badly painted baseboards, and called the first number. My hand shook. I pressed the phone between my ear and shoulder and traced the grain of the wooden drawer with my fingertip. And when a woman answered, I said, "Hi, my name is Lacey and you don't know me. But you left a dream in a box at the community center. If you still want help, I'm here. I can be a stranger who listens. Or I can be someone who shows up with tape and a borrowed ladder. It depends on the dream." She laughed then, a soft, startled sound, and I pictured her in her kitchen, holding a phone with a skeptical face melting. She told me her name was Nora. Her dream had been to have a dinner with people who won't let me do all the talking because they're more comfortable with quiet than I am. I didn't know that could be a dream. I told her I would set the table. The senior lunchroom had tables. I had a recipe for roasted vegetables. She made a list of people who might say yes, and we decided to call it Comfortable Quiet Supper and meet on Thursday. And when she said thank you, I felt something in me tack toward a north I didn't know I'd been missing. Later, I helped a man named Eddie tape a paper over his bathroom mirror so he wouldn't have to see himself while he tried to say out loud, "I forgive you," to a face he barely recognized. I put a flyer up for karaoke practice with a disclaimer. Only terrible singing allowed. I called the library and asked if any of their volunteers would like to run a dance without steps hour, lights low, just moving. A teenager who shelved in the afternoons said, "Oh my God, yes." For the woman who wanted to change a tire, I called my cousin, who knows cars like names. On a Tuesday night in the parking lot, 4 women and my cousin knelt by a wheel and learned. When I wasn't helping, I was reading. The dream drawer felt bottomless, and the more I read, the more I wanted to respond. Not with grand gestures, but with honest ones. It occurred to me that maybe I didn't have to know exactly what I wanted from my life yet. Not if I could keep tethering myself to other people's small, brave wants and see where they led me. The path felt less like a map and more like stepping stones appearing, one at a time, just enough to cross. Of course, I made mistakes. I wrote an email to a man who had left a card saying he wanted to reconcile with his daughter, and then panicked because what if his daughter had a good reason to keep him at a distance? I left that card in the drawer for a week, a pebble in my shoe. Finally, I asked the social worker who comes in on Wednesdays for advice. She said, "Your job isn't to fix, it's to witness, to be an accomplice to hope." That I could do, or try to. One evening, as the light slanted just so through the lobby windows, Kyle leaned on the front desk and said, "You look different." I had been wrapping plastic forks and napkins for the after-school snack and thinking about flower delivery routes. Different how? "Less like a ghost," he said, and then, seeing my face, added quickly, "In a good way." I tucked a napkin corner under the fork. "I found a drawer," I said, "full of dreams." He waited, and I started answering some. He studied me with that expression he gets when he is actually listening, when he forgets the imaginary clipboard. "You're building something," he said. "Please tell me we can call it a DreamWorks and get sued immediately." I laughed so hard I had to put the forks down. "No lawsuits in Chapter 1, I said. "Just daisies." He lifted his coffee toward me like a toast. To daisies, to low-lit dances, to quiet suppers, to the idea that maybe what I wanted most, more than a perfectly articulated plan, more than a career that made sense when explained at parties, was to be a person who sees. It's not a title, it's not a job, but it might be the beginning of something like a life. A week after I found the dream drawer, I returned to the storage closet. The afternoon light had shifted. The floor was cooler. I pulled the drawer all the way out, set it on my lap, and whispered, "I found you." Then, because it felt important to offer myself the same thing, I took an index card and wrote, in the same careful letters as the ones I'd been reading, "I want to feel like someone sees me." I folded my own note and tucked it among the others, warm with the touch of strangers. It wasn't about solving it, I realized. It was about letting the note exist in the open air, where hands could hold it, where it wasn't only mine. As I slid the drawer back into its hiding place, footsteps approached. Mrs. Flores leaned in the doorway with a Tupperware of cookies in her hands. "I passed my practice test," she said, eyes bright. "Your card helped. I wrote down my answers like they were dreams, and it made me braver." I felt my face break into a grin I didn't know I'd been saving. "Then congratulations," I said, and took a cookie. "What's next?" She tapped the dream drawer with one knuckle, very gently, as if she were knocking on a door. "Next," she said, "I think I want to dance without steps." "Friday," I said. "Lights low, no judging, only joy." "Only joy," she echoed. And in the narrow closet with the extra chairs and the dust and the history of things, I felt the hum of the center shift, as if it too had opened a drawer and found a new thing. I don't know what my life will be called later, when I look back and try to name this season. Maybe it will be the chapter where I stopped waiting for my purpose to arrive in a neat envelope and started answering letters that weren't addressed to me. Maybe it will be the place where all the restless parts of me learned a new kind of stillness. The stillness you get when your hands are busy and your eyes are open. For now, I sweep the hallways and refill the pen cup and pin flyers to cork boards. I check in with Eddie about the paper on his mirror. I text Nora about who is bringing salad. I take a posy of daisies to a porch with a blue railing and leave it on the second step. I tell myself it counts. And later, when the building is quiet and the refrigerator thumps its slow heart, I go back to the wooden drawer and run my fingers along its edge. "I see you," I say. I think the drawer understands. Or maybe it's me who does. You wouldn't think wildflowers could feel like a plan, but they did. I spent my lunch break walking the edges of town with clippers in my canvas tote, pretending to admire the verge as if I were just another person enjoying a good Tuesday. I clipped carefully, only a few from each patch, never the whole burst, listening to bees reason with clover, a train somewhere in the distance sighing like it needed a nap. The bouquet grew in my hand the way an idea grows. First a thin green stem, then color, then the startling sense that this is real and here and fragile and you are holding it. I knew the porch. The blue railing had chipped places shaped like maps. The steps were shallow and a little crooked. I knew it because a note in the dream drawer had mentioned the second step, as if the writer knew they were asking for something small and specific and almost shy. I arrived just as the light turned the houses the color of baked bread. My heart did its now familiar flutter as I tucked the bouquet against the post with twine and a notepaper tag. Just because. No name, no clue. The anonymity felt like a boundary and a blessing. I set the flowers down and backed away, walking like I wasn't leaving a secret behind me. At the corner, I pretended to tie my shoes so I could look back. The door opened. A woman I didn't recognize stepped out wearing a sweater the color of fog and a look that said she hadn't expected anything. Not now, not today. She glanced left, then down. When she saw the wildflowers, her face shifted the way sky does when the wind changes. Subtle, then unmistakable. She picked them up like they might escape. I saw her read the tag, bring the bouquet to her face, breathe in. Her shoulders lowered. She carried the flowers inside like a person not wanting to wake a sleeping room. The door clicked shut. I wanted to press my ear to the wood and listen to what happened next. Instead, I kept walking. My hands felt electric. The bouquet had been small, a fistful of field color, but when I looked at my empty palm, I could swear it hummed. The rest of the day sharpened around the edges. The front desk bell with its bright ding, the crisp sound of a paper cutter, the way Mr. Yeats's laugh always begins as a cough. I was giddy and steadied at once. I had answered a note, and no one would know except the drawer and me. That felt like being in on a quiet miracle. Small steps. The second was an invitation disguised as a flyer. Dance without steps, I wrote at the top, in block letters that wanted to be brave. Then smaller, lights low, no mirrors, no judgment, socks welcome, joy encouraged. Friday, 7-8 p.m., Maple Street Community Center. I printed a stack and took tape and a modest amount of nerve and posted them in places people pause. The laundromat wall beneath the "What to do if your quarters get stuck" sign. The bakery bulletin board between the watercolor classes and the cat who thinks she owns the neighborhood notice. The library entryway just to the right of new arrivals. Kyle watched me with his desk-leaning smile. "You're doing it," he said. "I'm doing it," I said, like it wasn't absurd to throw a dance night for strangers who might not come. "If no one shows up, I'll just dance by myself and call it performance art." "The kind of art that doesn't charge admission," he said. I reserved the multi-purpose room, and I found a dimmer switch we didn't know we had, which feels like the universe telling you it's into this. We tried the old sound system that afternoon. Mr. Alvarez rolled his eyes when I asked if it would work, and then coaxed it to life with the tenderness of a man tuning a sleeping dragon. We tested a playlist. No lyrics too heavy or ironic, nothing that felt like a high school gym. We landed on songs that curled around the body and invited rather than commanded. I tried a few steps while sweeping, just to be sure gravity still liked me. On Friday, I arrived early with a box of slipper socks in assorted sizes and a string of paper stars. The room smelled faintly of basketball and pine cleaner. I walked the perimeter, taping the stars at irregular intervals. Then I covered the mirror with brown craft paper we usually reserve for kids' projects, and drew a simple constellation of dots across it, as if to remind anyone who peeked that they were part of something bigger, and that we were forbidding reflections tonight on purpose. At 6:58 I was doing breathing exercises in the supply closet, which is not a sentence I imagined when I pictured my adult life. At 7:01, Nora appeared in the doorway, her hair twisted up and her face hopeful. "I brought a friend," she said, nudging forward a woman who looked at the socks with cautious delight. At 7:03, Mrs. Flores from Senior Yoga shuffled in wearing sneakers and a grin. At 7:06, a teenager I recognized from the library, blue nail polish, set jaw, slipped in, earbuds in one ear like a talisman. They stood in the doorway a minute, torn between leaving and trying. By 7:10 there were 9 of us. I kept my voice soft. "No steps," I said. "No shoulds. If you want, close your eyes. If you want, stay by the wall. If you want, just stand and breathe while the music plays and call that dancing. Every version counts." When the first song began, nobody moved. We were a room full of animals listening for danger. Then Nora let her shoulders roll like she was unscrewing tension. Mrs. Flores swayed, palm against her own belly as if cradling something fragile and ongoing. The teenager tapped their sneaker toe, then untied it and slipped it off, then the other shoe, then the socks. Then they took 3 small steps and stopped, and 3 more and stopped, and then some tiny ripple in their stance became a current. Another song, and the body language softened. Someone laughed. Someone cried a little and kept moving. I kept the lights low enough that faces were suggestions, not mirrors. I danced, too. At first it felt like talking too loudly in a quiet library. Then it felt like untying a knot behind my sternum that I'd grown so used to I thought it was part of me. A slow song arrived like a clean wind and the room exhaled in unison. I fell in love with us, these strangers who were brave enough to try. I fell in love with the floor, with the scuffed baseboards, with the long-ago paint smudge near the door like a fossilized thumbprint of some other kindness. When it ended, nobody clapped because there was nothing to applaud. We glowed at one another in a way that felt like gratitude and also recognition, like I see your effort and I respect your invisible work. The teen ducked out without speaking, but at the doorway they paused, and in that small pause they did a tiny shimmy, like a private exclamation point. I wanted to fist pump the universe. Later I stacked paper stars and folded the craft paper and untangled the extension cord. The room looked ordinary again, which seemed almost rude. Kyle wandered in with the broom like a stagehand after the curtain falls. "How was it?" he asked. "It happened," I said, which was inadequate and also exact. "People moved. I think maybe something moved in them." "Add it to the schedule?" he said. "We'll keep it small," I said. Small feels right, like we're not asking anybody to run a marathon. We're just asking them to step. "Small dreams, small steps," he echoed. He propped the broom against his shoulder and watched me coil the cord. "You look like yourself," he added. When I frowned, he amended, "I mean the self that laughs while doing something that scares her a little." "Is that who I am?" it is tonight. The next morning, Maple Street felt subtly rewritten. Maybe it was just me. Maybe acts of kindness rearranged the furniture in the mind more than the town. But I swear the shadows softened, and there was humming. I heard it on the second block. A man watering his box of geraniums, tune low and faithful, the kind that makes a morning behave. Mrs. Sanchez clapped a rhythm on her porch rail while waiting for a ride. At the corner, a kid chalked an elaborate solar system and labeled each planet with the name of someone they loved. I had promised anonymity to myself, no signatures for my invisible errands. But invisibility is a slippery thing. It turned out I could still feel seen, not as a Lacey who was doing it, but as someone moving in a town that was beginning to tilt toward tenderness. You can recognize the weather even when you don't know who turned the wind. 2 days after the flowers, I walked by the blue-railed porch again because restraint has never been my strongest virtue. The wildflowers had been moved to a mason jar just inside the front window. The jar sat on a stack of hardcover books like a short pedestal. Someone had placed a saucer under the jar to catch drips. It didn't feel like proof or victory. It felt like a conversation where my part had been a single sentence and the reply had been made in water. At the community center, shifts tumbled forward like dominoes. I ran the copier for the citizenship class until it complained about the weight of my intentions. I helped the after-school kids make tissue paper flowers with glue that we all wore home on our fingers. I sat with Eddie in the hallway while he practiced saying, "I forgive you." And when he could manage the whole sentence without pausing, we both nodded, as if to approve of the way the words looked in the air. The ripple effect surprised me by being quiet. There was no montage. It was less like a wave knocking people over and more like tide, the steady revise of shoreline. I saw a neighbor hold the door for an extra beat longer than necessary so a woman balancing a cake could pass. I watched a man put a jar of pickles back on the highest shelf at the market because the shelf stalker hadn't gotten to that aisle yet. The shy teen from dance night started lingering at the threshold of the multi-purpose room after school. One earbud in, scooting their sneaker along the edge of the doorway in a private rhythm. Sometimes they stepped in for 2 8 counts and then ghosted back into the hall like a tide withdrawing. Once, when they thought no one was watching, they twirled. It was small and declarative, like a word you finally pronounce correctly. Friday became dance night, but I resisted naming it in any official capacity. We put it on the community calendar in lowercase letters like a whisper that keeps being heard. Sometimes 5 people came, sometimes 12. Once it was just me and Mrs. Flores, and we swayed and talked in low voices about questions that have no answer. The kind you keep anyway because the keeping is the point. When I passed, she said, and I said, when you passed, and we let the difference sit between us like a candle. Her citizenship test, my father, both wearing the same word. I didn't attach my name to the wildflowers or the flyers or the sock box. But people noticed in their own ways. A jar of tea bags appeared on the front desk with a note. Try the peppermint, it makes nerves behave. A stack of neatly folded dish towels with no signature but very competent corners. A small envelope that read for the next bouquet and held $9 in cash, singles and a 5, which felt like a town deciding to contribute to its own tenderness. One afternoon I found a new slip in the shoebox at the desk. The paper was thick, torn from a journal. The handwriting had loops that changed size mid-word, as if the writer had been arguing with their own hand. I danced in my kitchen last night because the room was too quiet and the plants looked like an audience. I didn't know my limbs could feel like this. Thank you for the knot steps. I took that slip to the dream drawer and set it on top, not as a dream, but as evidence. The drawer had become not only a container but a conversation, less a confessional than a hallway, where you can hear footfalls and decide to follow. The work changed me in ways I didn't expect. I ate dinner at a table instead of hunching by the sink. I slept better on Tuesdays, as if my bones liked the idea of movement and rewarded me with rest. I said yes to coffee with Kyle after a long day, and discovered that small talk can be a net you toss into a river, and sometimes it comes back with fish. I started waking before my alarm with sentences in my head. Make a yellow dress day for anyone who ever believed that color was off limits. Ask the bakery if they'll donate cookies if we donate paper flowers. See if the teen wants to make the next playlist. On the day I decided to leave flowers again, the sky rehearsed rain and then changed its mind. I bought a bundle of daisies from B, and she tucked 2 sprigs of rosemary in for free. For courage, she said. Is rosemary courage? It is today, she said, winking. I left the bouquet at a different porch this time. Green steps, brass numbers, a rubber mat with 3 worn stars. I added a new tag. To whoever wished for this, you are seen, nothing else. My fingers trembled as I tied the twine. It felt like stepping closer to a line and trusting it would not be a cliff. I never knew who opened that door. I don't know if the tag made it harder or easier. I only know that the next time I walked by, the mat had been shaken free of leaves, and a tiny pot of rosemary had joined the lineup of plants on the steps, and an extra star had been chalked next to the rubber ones. I don't keep score, but if I did, I would write down that star. People began to bring me their small wishes out loud, without knowing they were bringing them to the person who sometimes answered notes. I wish our lobby had a softer bench, said a man rubbing his lower back. This one feels like punishment. I raised money with a jar marked "Sit Sweetly," and a week later we had a bench with a cushion, and I watched 3 people take longer rests than they meant to and leave with faces that suggested a small amnesty had been granted. I wish I could make my grandmother's recipe, said a girl whose eyes slanted away with embarrassment. The measurements are in handfuls. We held a workshop on handfuls and pinches and the geography of taste. "I wish I knew more of my neighbors' names," said a woman whose eyes were fierce with the admission. We put out name tags on Wednesdays with a sign that said, "Tell me what you like to be called," and the lobby took on a spill of good noise. And me? I began to recognize my own name again when spoken, like it referred to a person I knew. Helping other people made me less mysterious to myself. I could feel my life acquiring weight in my hands, not heavy exactly, but present. Even the things that hadn't changed, my small apartment, the stubborn plant, the way the fridge light felt too bright at midnight, seemed altered because I came home full. Not a loud fullness, more like a steady flame. On a late afternoon when thunder rumbled far away like a story being told in another room, the shy teen stood in the doorway of the multi-purpose room and asked, in a voice you could miss if you were busy, "Do you need help making the playlist?" "Desperately," I said, trying not to sound like a person who had been waiting for this exact question. We sat on the floor with my phone and a spiral notebook and wrote down songs like we were mapping a coastline. They told me their name. We liked the same 3 songs for opposite reasons. They taught me a track I would never have found on my own, one that glowed and glided and made both of us grin. When they left, I wanted to write down, "A small foot crossed a threshold today," because that's what it felt like. That night's dance was smaller, just 6 of us and a radio that needed gentle persuasion. Halfway through, the lights flickered. For a breath, the room went dark. Nobody panicked. We stood very still and listened to the room's own heartbeat. Scuff of socks, small exhale, the faint hum of electricity finding itself. The lights returned like a friend who'd stepped outside to take a call and come back to say, "Where were we?" We were exactly where we had been, and somewhere slightly further along. I don't pretend the town transformed. The copy machine still jammed, the gossip still gossiped, the bus still ran late. But now, when the bus was late, the driver would tip his cap apologetically like a man who understood the size of other people's afternoons. And when the gossip gossiped, she sometimes followed the story with, "In fairness, he has had a tough year," which felt like a prayer disguised as a footnote. The largest change was inside me, though calling it large feels wrong, and maybe that's the point. I had always been good at noticing. Now I was also good at doing, not spectacularly, no grand rescues, but steadily. I felt like a person whose hands remembered why hands exist. To carry, to tape, to hold, to pass the mic, to write a note and tuck it where it can be found. On a Sunday morning, I opened the dream drawer and the smell of paper and ghosted ink rose like bread coming out of the oven. I sifted through the notes, reading a few at random the way you pick shells from a bucket. I want to be good at something. I want my mom to laugh again. I want to plant tomatoes that become tomatoes and not sadness. I added my own an inch below, because I had learned that writing it down mattered even if you're the one who also tapes flyers and orders socks. I want to keep going, even on days when nothing announces itself as a victory. I folded it and added it back to the chorus. When I closed the drawer, the room felt different, though nothing had moved. Maybe I had. Maybe that's all this is. A series of small shifts by people who dare to imagine they're not stuck. On my way out, I passed the blue-railed porch one more time. The window was open. A radio murmured. On the sill, the wildflowers were gone, but the jar remained, now filled with water and one sprig of rosemary, green as a promise. Someone inside was humming a little off-key, the exact tune we'd played as our final song on Friday. I didn't stop. I didn't need to. I walked past like a citizen of a town where the air had changed a few degrees toward kindness. Sometimes a life changes because you open the wrong drawer on the right day. Sometimes it changes because you leave 3 stems of clover and 2 of daisies and a heartbreakingly hopeful tag on a porch and trust the world to recognize itself. I can't see the whole arc yet. I don't need to. Small dreams, small steps, flowers, Fridays, the hum of someone watering their plants, a teenager twirling like a private punctuation mark. It's enough to make me feel alive in a way that lasts longer than the song. It's enough to make me believe that I am building a life not by discovering a title, but by practicing a verb. I'm learning that to see is a daily action. I'm learning how to look at a town and find the doorways where people hover and dance them inward with one low-lit invitation at a time. Tomorrow I'll refill the pen cup and answer emails and move chairs that don't want to be moved. And maybe I'll call Bea and ask if she has any more rosemary. And the day after that, I'll stand in the multi-purpose room with the sock box and the dimmer switch and press play. We'll pull the paper across the mirror. We'll move like we're listening to something only we can hear. And in the doorway, someone new will pause. And then they will step. And I will know the drawer is still doing its work. Even with the door shut, even in the dark. The morning I learned how heavy paper can feel. The sun came up soft and undecided, as if it were nervous about showing its face. I was early to the community center again. Habit or hunger, I couldn't tell which. The building's silence greeted me like a dog who knows your particular footsteps. I unlocked the door, flipped the lights, listened to the refrigerator take a deep breath, and went straight to the office the way you go straight to a friend who understands the language of your eyes. The dream drawer slid open with a small sigh. I'd begun to think of that sound as a greeting, too. I ran my fingertips along the fluted edges of a handful of slips and chose 3 at random, the way you draw tarot even if you don't believe in magic, because sometimes you need the cards more than you need the truth. I wish I could forgive my brother. The handwriting was careful, like a person moving across ice. No flourish, but a steadiness that made my throat feel crowded. I pressed my thumb against the margin and imagined the writer doing the same as they folded the slip to tuck it away. Some gesture to anchor their own hand. The second note felt different in my palm, as if paper could carry temperature. I want to start painting again, but I'm scared to fail. The again made me pause. A person who had once done a thing and then stopped knows a particular ache. The fear that the door you loved will slam in your face if you try it now. The fear that you have misplaced your hands. The third slip was short, almost embarrassed by its own request. I want proof I'm not too late. I sat back in the chair as if the room had tilted. Small wishes are not light. Some are just quiet. These were not small, not even pretending to be. They were anchors. I've never liked the phrase, fix it, even when I'm elbows deep in the drawer's requests. Flowers on a porch don't fix loneliness. A dance night doesn't fix a life. They're not stitches, they're invitations, small flickers that suggest the dark isn't absolute. But staring at those notes, my brain wanted tools. It wanted instructions. Okay, Lacey, how do we do it? Where's the checklist for forgiving a brother? Where do you order courage? What's the tracking number for proof that time hasn't run out? I took the notes to the front desk, slid them under my notebook like you put a photograph you're not ready to look at face up. I made coffee, wiped a non-existent crumb off the counter, checked the calendar for room bookings I already knew by heart. Anything to give my trembling somewhere to go. The lobby clock ticked its stubborn seconds. I told myself, listen first. The first person I listened to was the social worker who comes on Wednesdays, a quiet woman named Alma, whose earrings always match nothing and therefore everything. When she arrived, I waved her into the office and showed her the notes. She didn't reach for them. She reached for her chair. I keep wanting to respond, I said, and the word felt insufficient and too large at once. Not solve, just nudge. But I don't know if nudging is meddling when the wish is this big. It depends, she said. Are you nudging them toward themselves or toward your idea of them? I let the silence sit between us long enough that we both heard the refrigerator clunk into a news cycle. Themselves, I said, and felt the truth of it land in the center of me, warm as bread. Then you already know the difference, she said. Big dreams are rarely about finish lines. They're about permission. I tell my clients all the time, your life is not a courtroom. You don't have to argue for your own existence. Permission. The word bloomed like a light turning on in a hallway. Not a rescue, not a solution. An open door. When Alma left the office, I took the note about painting and put it on my palm like a feather. Scared to fail. Scared to begin. I knew a porch 2 streets over with a paint-splattered doormat and a wind chime made of old brushes. The woman who lived there had once taught the Saturday watercolor class here. Then one day someone else taught it, and no one said why. I'd seen her at the produce stand with peaches in her hands the way some people hold birds. We'd never spoken beyond hello. I called Bea at the florist and asked if the art supply store next door opened early. "It's Thursday," she said. "He opens when the radio says 9, but he usually unlocks at 8:47 because patience makes him itchy." "Why?" "I'm doing an experiment in permission," I said, which was only funny if you were me. By 9:10 I had a blank canvas under my arm, the light kind you can carry on a walk, and a starter set of paints that did not require inheriting a fortune. I added 3 brushes, flat, round, a little fan for bravado, and a palette that looked in its emptiness like a dare. I wrote a note and taped it to the canvas. For the first mark. Perfection not invited. Make a mess, make a sky, make a color that didn't exist yesterday. You're not too late. No signature. I stood at the edge of her porch, ridiculous with my arm full of possibility, and for a second I froze. Because what if this hurt more than it helped? What if the canvas was a mirror she didn't want to see? Then I thought about my own fear-dried places, about the ways I've needed someone to set a cup of water in the middle of the room and leave without ringing a bell. I tucked the canvas against the doorframe, set the palette and paints beneath like a small, bright offering, and walked away without looking back because my chest wouldn't have tolerated the kindness of seeing her find it. I couldn't do anything as grand for the person who wanted to forgive their brother. Forgiveness is a house with too many rooms, and most of them are locked from the inside. But I could send a letter that weighed less than my worry and might weigh something in someone else's hand. He misses you too. Maybe start with hello. I wrote it on one of our plain index cards because the fancy stationery at the bookstore felt like it would have too much to prove. I didn't write forgive him because maybe forgiveness is another town over. Maybe the road there is under construction. Maybe this person doesn't owe that highway a toll anymore. Hello seemed like a small bridge over a ditch. I added a line on the back. You get to decide the speed. I left the note in our shoebox at the front desk, because sometimes wishes circle back, and sometimes they need to be found the way you find a mushroom under a leaf, accidental and perfect. By noon the lobby filled with bodies and their errand sounds. The job fair posted their banner wrong side up. We all laughed. We all helped. The toddlers marched through like unsteady royalty, and I imagined each one someday folding a slip of paper over a longing and trusting a drawer would hold it until it was ready to be seen. The day had a tug to it, like a tide pulling me toward things I wouldn't have noticed before. A man returning a basketball said, "You know what's funny? I used to do watercolors. Now all the paints in my garage are stiff." I wanted to say, not funny, tender. A woman asked if she could borrow the multi-purpose room for 20 minutes at lunch to breathe without the sight of my inbox. I dimmed the lights, put a chair in the corner, and taped a note on the door that said sanctuary, because a homemade sign can be a valid form of architecture. I delivered the "He misses you too" letter to the shoebox, then spent the next hour staying very far away from it on purpose, the way you don't poke a seed you just planted. I didn't expect proof. That's not how this works. You leave a canvas, you leave a sentence, you leave your interference at the door. You hope the person recognizes the shape of what you're offering. Not advice, not a verdict, just an opening. Still, I am human. After my shift, I accidentally walked the long way home past the porch with the wind chime. The canvas was no longer propped against the frame. The palette, empty this morning, now wore a thumbprint of blue and a whisper of green, like someone had rolled courage in their fingers to see if it would stain. The brushes were gone. I stopped for one breath, let joy prickle my skin, and kept moving because I wanted the rest of the story to belong to the person holding the brush. The letter's story reached me sideways. The next day, the shy teen from the dance night lingered at my desk like a person whose mouth is a crowded hallway. "Do you ever—" they began, and then tugged the cuff of their hoodie like it had a secret to tell. "Do you ever write a text and then sit there watching the 3 dots for too long, and then your heart says jump and your stomach says, are you serious?" "All the time," I said. "It's the world's most accurate weather forecast." They smiled then, crooked and luminous. "My aunt wrote to my mom after forever, just hello." No apology list, no courtroom. My mom stared at it like a witch had sent smoke. But then she wrote hello. Back. I think I saw a door open in our kitchen. I didn't ask if their family had left a note in our box, because I didn't need to own that story to honor it. I only said, "Doors look good on kitchens. You can pass snacks through them." They nodded, shyly pleased with the joke, and then they said, "I added a song to the playlist for tonight. It starts soft and gets loud like a person believing themselves." They slipped away before I could tell them how exactly right that description felt. If Chapter 2 was small steps, Chapter 3 taught me the difference between a step and a bow. I kept wanting to bow, an apology to the size of people's pain, a show of deference to the storms they were standing under. But bows can look like you're lowering yourself in order to be the one who rises again. Steps are humbler. Steps say, "I'm here, I'm moving with you. I'll match your pace if you want company." I started keeping a little list in my phone, a thief's collection of not solutions. Leave room for the person to write their own sentence next. Choose materials that look easy to throw away or keep forever. Never gift anything that feels like a requirement. A good nudge is an echo of what they already asked for, not a new question. You don't have to get credit for a seed to enjoy the shade of a future tree. That week, the dream drawer filled with notes that seemed to be talking to one another, like the drawer had become a conversation more than a confessional. I want to be brave enough to wear the yellow dress. I wore the yellow dress. Someone said it made the room sunnier. I didn't die. I left daisies on a porch like someone once left them for me. It felt like magic disguised as errands. These weren't mine to claim. They weren't anyone's. But I could feel the town learning a new way to speak, declarative without trumpets, tender without disclaimers. The hardest moment came 2 days after I delivered the canvas. I was refilling the pen cup at the front desk when a woman stormed in with a painting under her arm. The color on the canvas made my body respond before my mind had time to name why. Big strokes of blue, a storm gathering, and then a small green square in the corner like a door. Not realism, but something more honest. The woman's jaw was a line she was daring herself not to cross. She marched straight to the front desk and set the painting down with a soft thud. "Did you do this?" she asked. My brain prepared to take the blame for everything I've ever done wrong in my life, which is my particular sport. "Do what?" "Leave me permission," she said. But the word sounded funny in her mouth, like she was trying on someone else's shoes. She closed her eyes, opened them. I stopped after my husband died. People kept saying, "Paint your grief." Like grief sits still. But the canvas was a betrayal because it wanted me to tell the truth. And I wasn't ready for the truth to have edges. She tapped the corner of the painting where the green square leaned against the blue storm. Yesterday the sky broke open, and so did I. I thought I'd hate you for pushing. I don't. I thought I'd be embarrassed at being so easily manipulated by a blank rectangle. I'm not. I let out a breath I'd been holding since 1990-something. "I didn't leave my name on purpose," I said. I was trying not to push, just set a cup of water in the room. "Do you want to know what I did first?" she asked. She didn't wait for my yes. I painted the word begin in white in the center and then painted over it. The word is still there. It can hold the weight. I looked at the painting again and felt my eyes smart. "It's beautiful," I said, and meant it in the way that refuses to measure beauty. We stood there not fixing anything. She picked up the canvas and nodded to me with a gratitude that felt like two equals standing at opposite sides of a river and recognizing the same current. After she left, Kyle appeared from wherever he conjures extension cords and crisis snacks. "You okay?" he asked. "I am and I'm not," I said, which is the most honest I can be most days. He put a granola bar on the desk like a tiny sacrament. You realize you've become the kind of person people bring their weather to, he said. Do I look like a barometer? I asked, attempting lightness. It came out right. You look like yourself. His answer wrapped around the inside of my ribs and held for a beat. A self with paint smudges, he added, gesturing to my forearm. I looked down. A small, improbable streak of blue ran from wrist to elbow like a river that had escaped and colored me on its way. When had that happened? Leaving the canvas, picking up the painting. Maybe this is how it works. You touch other people's courage and it stains you, thank God. That night at Dance Without Steps, we tried the teens' song that starts soft and gets loud like a person believing themselves. They were right. The first notes asked for nothing. The next notes invited. By the end we were moving like answers. I caught sight of Mrs. Flores making a motion I'd never seen her body make. An arm arc not about reaching, but about release. And she laughed out loud during it, a sound that made everyone else briefly inherit that laugh. After, she said, breathless, I didn't know I still had that shape in me. I told her I believed she had 100 more. The letter about the brother did not return to me the way the painting did. That was correct. Some wishes don't circle back to the person who held the envelope. But I started noticing a man at the bus stop on Cedar who looked like maybe standing still was a new practice for him, and sometimes a woman joined him, and once they hugged like people who had almost forgotten how. I noticed that the laundromat's corkboard carried a new flyer, Community Mediation Hours, with Alma's name and a schedule in gentle ink. I noticed a pair of mugs in the Goodwill window, each painted with a different bird, and the next day the mugs were gone, and 2 weeks later I saw those birds again on a porch rail, filled with succulents, side by side. Small proof, big sky. The dream drawer continued to teach me that my job was not to fling lights into every dark place. My job was to cup my hands around the smallest wick so the breeze doesn't snuff it while its owner finds their own breath. I began adding a quiet sentence under my breath when I left anything. A canvas, a note, a small plant on a step. This is yours, not mine. It kept me from fussing over results. It kept me from trespassing into other people's rooms. One afternoon, as rain rehearsed on the roof and the lobby smelled like wet umbrellas and patience, I pulled out one more note and heard my heart make a sound I do not have a better word for than "oh." I want to believe in me like I believe in everyone else. I folded it carefully, then opened it again, then folded it carefully again, like I could smooth something for the writer with my fingers. I thought about leaving a mirror with a note taped across it. You don't have to perform to deserve your own gaze. I thought about taping "You are allowed" on the underside of a chair so someone would find it when they curled their fingers there. In the end, I wrote 3 words on an index card and tucked it into the dream drawer like a seed. Start with mercy. I realized as I wrote it that I was writing to myself too. Every nudge I sent into the town's bloodstream had bounced back through mine. Helping other people make a mark was teaching me to make my own. Not loudly, not as a banner, more like a daily verb. That night I went home and pulled a cereal box out of the recycling and tore it open to make a makeshift palette. I found a forgotten watercolor tin in my closet. The cheap kind, the kind that has to earn every inch of your trust. And I ran the brush under the tap and watched the first color bloom. The paper I used was printer paper, wrong and thirsty and perfect. I painted an oval of sky and then messed it up and then painted another and then painted a doorway in the corner in a green I would never be able to mix again because it was some accident of the moment. I painted the word begin very small in the middle and then painted over it. I think I felt it settle underneath. This isn't a story where I suddenly know what I want to be when I grow up, unless I can answer kind on a W-2. I still forget to thaw dinner and eat apples over the sink. I still worry that my little verbs are just staying busy. But I know the way my chest feels after a day of nudges, steady, like a drum you can keep time to. I know the way my town feels when I walk through it now, like someone opened a window. And I know that some dreams are not my business to mend, but they are my honor to witness. A week after I left the canvas, the painter pinned a note to the dream drawer. I know because the slip caught on my fingertip like it had been waiting specifically for me. Today the blue behaved. I cried and didn't apologize to the paper. Thank you for the door. I put that slip back in the drawer and closed it gently like you close a sleeping baby's door, then leaned my forehead against the cool office window until my eyes cleared. Outside, the sky was the exact shade of the paint streak on my arm, which felt like a private joke between me and the day. On my walk home, I passed the bus stop on Cedar. The man and woman stood there again, not hugging, just companionable. A comfortable distance between their shoes that looked like two people inventing a brand new measurement for closeness. The woman said something, and the man's head tipped back in a laugh that didn't sound like victory or surrender, just relief. Behind them, the bakery window glowed. Someone had taped a sign inside the glass in thick marker. Forgiveness practiced here in small, edible forms. Try the lemon bars. I stepped into the crosswalk as the light changed and felt vividly the first brushstroke of rain after all that rehearsal. The drops landed on my arms and lifted the blue, turned the streak into a softer wash that moved with me. I laughed out loud, no apology, and tilted my face up. Not fixed, not finished, beginning again. The evening it happened, the community center was so still it felt like it had been exhaling all day and finally ran out of breath. I had stayed late to lock up after the Thursday knitting circle. 7 women and one very patient man who claimed to be just holding the yarn, but always seemed to be halfway through a scarf. They'd shuffled out with their projects tucked under their arms, the scent of lavender hand cream lingering behind them. I did my usual round, stacked chairs, unplugged the kettle, double-checked the multi-purpose room door. And then, because I can't not, I went to the office to check the dream drawer. The wood handle was cool under my fingers. The drawer slid out more easily than usual, and I looked down, expecting the familiar chaos of folded notes, creased corners, paper soft from being held too long before letting go. It was empty. All of it. Every slip of paper I'd read and not read, every dream that had been whispering in that wooden pocket for months, gone. For a moment I thought maybe Kyle had moved them to another drawer, or maybe Alma was doing some kind of cataloging project. But then I saw it, a single sheet in the bottom, folded twice, edges neat. I opened it with the same hesitation I might use to open a letter from a past self. Thank you, whoever you are. I think I can handle the rest. That was it. No name, no clue which wish this came from. Just those 2 sentences, sitting there like they'd been waiting for me to find them. I stared until the words blurred. My heart didn't quite know what to feel. Relief, pride, or the sudden sharp awareness that maybe people didn't need me as much as I'd thought. The office chair creaked as I sat down. It felt like all the air in the room had shifted. This drawer had been my compass, the way I measured the town's quiet hopes. If it was empty, did that mean the town didn't need it anymore? Didn't need me? I traced the grain of the wood. The room was dim now, the overhead light buzzing in that tired way it does when it's about to give up. What if I'd been meddling, pushing where I wasn't invited? I thought about the canvas I'd left, the letters, the flowers. Were they welcomed or just tolerated? Maybe people were too polite to tell me they'd rather work things out without anonymous interference. That night I walked home in a kind of suspended quiet. I passed the blue-railed porch where the wildflowers had been. No flowers now, just the steps, the railing, the same chipped paint. I passed the bus stop where I'd sometimes seen the man and woman stand together. Empty. Even the bakery window, usually warm and smelling like cinnamon, was dark. At home, I made tea I didn't drink. I scrolled through my phone without seeing anything. My apartment felt smaller than usual, like the walls were leaning in. The next morning, I didn't check the drawer first thing. I made myself do other tasks. Sweeping, labeling the new craft supply bins, greeting the seniors arriving for yoga. I could feel the weight of not looking, like a child ignoring a wrapped gift on purpose. When I finally did check, it was still empty. The note was gone too. That week, I kept circling the question, was I doing this for them or for me? Was my need to help just a way to distract myself from figuring out my own life? Without the drawer full, I felt unmoored, like someone had taken down a signpost I didn't realize I was following. I told myself, maybe it's good. Maybe people are acting on their dreams without needing to write them down. Maybe that's the point. Still, the absence was loud. It was the following Thursday when things began to shift. I'd just finished helping Mrs. Flores set up for her comfortable, quiet supper. 3 new people this time and 1 pie. When I ducked into the office for more napkins. The drawer was closed, which meant nothing. But when I pulled it open, they were back. Not as many as before. Just 6 slips, stacked in a way that felt intentional, like they wanted to be found together. I pulled the top one and unfolded it. I'm smiling more than I have in months. The next? My first painting is hanging in my living room. Then, we talked for 2 hours without yelling, and I danced in the kitchen with my son. Another. I wore the yellow dress again, twice. The last one was simple, a line that made my chest ache in the best way. I helped someone else. I sat back in the chair and let the words wash over me. These weren't just wishes anymore. They were reports, progress updates, proof. And the thing that stunned me most, I hadn't done these. Not directly. Someone else had left the wildflowers. Someone else had started a conversation that lasted 2 hours without yelling. Someone else had given the yellow dress its encore. It hit me then. The ripple had gone beyond me. The drawer wasn't just a place to leave a wish anymore. It had become something like a relay point. A person could put a dream in, but now they might also pull one out, respond, help. People weren't waiting for me to act. They were acting for each other. I thought about that first week, how I'd felt like the town was mine to fix in small doses. But it was never mine. It was ours. I'd lit a few candles, but now the light was hopping from hand to hand. That evening, I watched the knitting circle leave again. But this time, 2 women paused on the front steps, comparing the scarves they were making. One offered the other a skein of her yarn, just to see if this color makes you happier. I don't know if they'd met before this month. I do know they walked away together, laughing. The next day, Alma told me someone had come in for her mediation hours just to say they didn't need them after all. They'd sorted it out over coffee. Still, Alma said, they brought me a muffin, said they wanted to say thanks for being available. Dance night kept happening, but now I wasn't the only one making the playlist. The teen had recruited 2 friends, and each week we got a mix that ranged from indie folk to something with so much bass it rattled the folding chairs. Mrs. Flores had taught the group a basic salsa step. I started finding notes in unexpected places, taped to the vending machine, tucked into books on the library's staff picks shelf. even written in chalk on the sidewalk outside the bakery. They weren't all addressed to anyone specific, but they carried the same feeling as the new slips in the drawer. You're doing better than you think. The sky looked like a painting this morning. If you can't take a step, start with a breath. One afternoon I walked past the blue-railed porch again. A woman was sitting there with a mug, eyes closed, face tilted toward the sun. On the step below her there was a bouquet. Not wildflowers this time, but roses. Someone else's doing. That night I opened the dream drawer before heading home. There were only 2 new notes, but they felt like a full chorus. I'm not afraid to start anymore. Thank you for the first push. I don't know who they were meant for. Maybe me. Maybe someone else. The empty week had made me doubt whether I belonged in the chain of connection. Now I could see the truth. It didn't matter if I was the link holding it together or just one of many. What mattered was that the chain existed. I walked home under a sky turning the kind of purple that makes you slow down just to watch it. In windows I passed, I saw people cooking, reading, sitting together. I knew, though I couldn't prove it, that somewhere in those houses someone was folding a slip of paper, maybe about to place it in the drawer. Or maybe they were already acting on it, no paper needed. The drawer would empty again someday, and it would fill again, and again, and so would I. Some evenings arrive like a page you've already read. Familiar margins, the same coffee ring, the same soft fold at the corner. This one felt different from the moment I turned the key in the front door of the community center and heard the bell give a hopeful little ring, as if the building were clearing its throat to say, "Pay attention." I had come early to set out paper plates for a small gathering we'd planned without planning. Mrs. Flores's idea, which meant there would be Pozzoli. Kyle's flyers, which meant at least one spelling mistake we'd pretend not to see. The teens' playlist, which meant the room would breathe in a new way at least twice. We were calling it what it was. A thank you night, no speeches, no agenda, just a room and the people who had started to use it like a spare heart. Before the first footsteps and the first potluck Tupperware, I walked, unthinking as a prayer, to the office. The dream drawer and I are a pair of old dogs now. We know each other's weight on the floorboards. The wood handle was cool. The drawer slid out with its usual small sigh. There were only 2 slips inside. The first said, in loopy, almost embarrassed handwriting, "I laughed today before noon for the first time this year." I smiled, the kind that starts in the lungs. The second slip was folded twice, neat and precise. When I opened it, the words were so simple they rang like a bell. I dream of meeting the person who started this all. My heart did something ungraceful in my chest. I set the paper down and reached for the edge of the desk because sometimes you need to hold on to furniture when an idea looks back at you. I didn't start this all. I wanted to write back. The drawer was older than me. The town was older than the drawer. We had always been full of unspoken sentences. I just listened. I left flowers, a canvas, a sentence shaped like a bridge, a handful of pushes, no more. I am a woman with a key to a building and a suspicious number of index cards, but the dream wasn't asking for credit. It was asking for a body, a face, a voice to attach to the invisible thread that had been tugging through our days. The idea of that, standing up, stepping out of the soft anonymity I'd used like a blanket, made my throat heat with the old fear, meddling, overstepping, being seen for the wrong reasons. What if the drawer's magic depended on mystery? What if my name made the room smaller? The bell at the front door did its hopeful ring. Voices, footsteps. I slid the note back into the drawer, shut it gently, and wiped my palms on my jeans as if courage were a thing you could dry off and reuse. By 6:30, the multi-purpose room looked like a neighborhood had breathed out dinner. Casseroles in chipped dishes wearing aluminum foil caps. A bowl of green beans with lemon zest shining like a good idea. A cake iced with the wobbly confidence of a first attempt. Kyle had taped paper stars along the far wall, and the teen lent us string lights from some bedroom altar to music, so the air itself looked threaded. Alma set out a stack of napkins, and that look she wears that says there's enough tenderness if we pass it carefully. People milled, which is to say they practiced being part of something. I could see the painter in a corner, hands moving as if telling a story her mouth couldn't quite catch. The man and woman from the bus stop stood near the punch bowl, arguing gently about whether the lemon bars were from a mix. Mr. Alvarez fixed the sound system with a cable that might have been a swear word. Mrs. Flores put her hand on my forearm, motherly and certain. "You'll know what to do," she said. "I don't even know what to wear," I said, looking down at my soft sweater and clipboard like a costume that wasn't brave enough. She laughed, a sound like permission. We ate. We laughed in that broken chorus way groups do when the room is wide and the echoes are friendly. At some point, the teen song that starts soft and gets loud like a person believing themselves lifted, and a few people began moving. Just hips and shoulders at first, then a bolder swing. Dance Without Steps leaked into an evening we hadn't planned around it, and no one looked surprised. I stood at the edge of it all and felt like the person at a window who has been waiting for rain and is suddenly not sure whether to step out or watch. That's when I saw the painter moving along the perimeter of the room, collecting paper plates. She made her way to me, held out a hand like a deal struck with silence. "You look like a person about to swallow a speech," she said. "Don't. Say it from the throat, not the stomach." "What if I ruin it?" I asked, and then flushed. The word it was doing a lot of work. "You can't ruin what belongs to everyone," she said, and patted the dream drawer-shaped place in the air between us, as if the drawer were here too, humming along. I didn't climb on a chair. I didn't tap a glass. I just stepped toward the softly lit space where the bodies weren't, and people did the right thing. They followed their own curiosity and quieted themselves. Someone turned the music low, the string lights hummed. "Hi," I said, because beginning always remembers you. "I'm Lacey." A few people laughed kindly, like, we know. I work the desk, and I order more tape when we run out, and I am suspiciously good at finding the missing scissors. Another little wave of laughter released my lungs. I read the notes in the drawer. There. The sentence in the room, a rustle, not of disapproval, of relief. "I didn't start the drawer," I said. "The drawer started me, if I'm honest. I found it in the closet like a secret that had been patient, and I tried to do right by it. Not solve, not fix, just listen and, when I could, nudge. A bouquet, a canvas, a letter. Some Fridays with low lights where we could move like answers. If any of that felt like a trespass to you, I'm sorry. I meant it as a door left open." I had prepared all these lines alone in my kitchen to sound braver than I felt. The room rearranged them into something truer. Alma stepped forward first, which felt correct. She knows how to cross thresholds without making them squeak. She put her palm flat against her heart and then reached that hand out toward me. An old sign, one I didn't realize I was craving. "Thank you," she said. "On behalf of every person who wrote something down and expected it to disappear, and then it didn't." Then the painter, with paint still clinging to the beds of her nails in electric blue. "For the door," she said. "For the permission to make a mess and call it sky." The teen made a sound that could have been a laugh or a sob, and then blurted, "I can dance in the doorway now without leaving," which was a sentence only the teen could have invented, and we all recognized it immediately as holy. People moved toward me, not all at once, not a flood, more like tide. Hands on my shoulders, an arm around my back. Someone's forehead pressed to mine fast and then gone. Mr. Alvarez, who only ever says technical things, murmured, "Good levels." And that made me laugh so hard I briefly forgot to be a person. No judgment. No, how dare you? Just gratitude that didn't land on me like weight, but like light. And something else, too, braided through it. Readiness. The look people get when the list in their pocket is not an inventory of grievances anymore, but of ingredients. I breathed. The room breathed with me. Then I said the thing I hadn't meant to say aloud because I didn't want to make anything too formal to be alive. It shouldn't be mine, not just mine. I gestured toward the office, toward the closet, toward the mercifully unreliable lights. I think the drawer wants what we want, to stay open. "What does open look like?" Kyle asked, practical as ever. rescuing us all from becoming a balloon with no string. Tell us the boring parts so we don't float away. We did it right there, with paper plates as clipboards and a stubby pencil we shared. We made the drawer a shared project, an organism with many hands. Alma suggested a simple card to accompany it that read, "Write a dream witness. A dream respond if you can, with kindness if you can't. Leave your seeing here. Sometimes being seen is enough." The painter added, "No fixing people's lives without asking. Nudges only. Permission is the palette." The teen, red-cheeked and brave, said, "We should have themed weeks sometimes, like First Steps or Try Again or Yellow Dress Day. People could leave supplies or ideas." Several heads nodded, as if Yellow Dress Day had been waiting to be spoken aloud. Mrs. Flores, practical magician, appointed herself drawer tender on Tuesdays, which meant she would check for needs we could meet with recipes, rides, or time. Mr. Alvarez offered to repair the actual wood of the drawer, which had a crack along one side so old it had become decorative. "It deserves to outlast us," he said, gently tracing the seam with his thumb. Someone suggested we add a second box at the front desk labeled "Ripple" for notes of thanks, progress, and hope, so people could see the town's weather change in real time. A kid from the after-school program, who had slipped in with a plate of brownies like a spy, declared they would decorate the Ripple box with lightning bolts and a rainbow because that's how sky works. We wrote it all down on a sheet of butcher paper, our hands overlapping, our handwriting well-meaning and inconsistent. It looked like a child's treasure map. It felt like one, too. The music resumed because someone, thank God, refused to let the talking swallow the moving. A few songs later, the painter tugged at my sleeve. "You haven't written a dream," she said. "Not a nudge, not a door, yours." I opened my mouth to protest, something elegant like, "Oh, I'm fine, I'm really more of a conduit." And she raised one eyebrow in that way some women seem to be born practicing in the mirror. It said, "Please don't lie where I can hear you." So I walked to the office, sat down at the desk, pulled the drawer open like a friend pulling back a sleeve. The wood smelled like paper and eucalyptus from someone's aching knee a month ago. I set a fresh index card on the desk and stared at its blankness the way some people stare at the sea and are scared for a second they might walk straight in. Every impulse in me wanted to write something useful. I hope the seniors get their softer bench. I hope the teen has the kind of morning where the mirror feels like a friend. I hope the painter keeps painting doors. Those were wishes I could hold without shaking. But the painter, and maybe the drawer, had asked for mine. So I wrote, "I hope to keep helping dreams grow, including my own." It looked wrong for a moment because I'd said "my own," and the room did not explode and no one handed me a citation for selfishness. I traced the words once more with the pen in that small habit I have of making the lines a little darker when I mean them. Then I folded the card and slipped it into the drawer, pressing it down among the others as if putting a small seed in good soil. Back in the multi-purpose room, the teen had found a track I didn't know. It started with the sound of rain on a roof, and then unfolded into melody so slowly that the room had to lean toward it to hear. People swayed. Others sat and let the music pour over them like weather. Alma danced the way she mediates, steady, with attention to the space between. Kyle tried to sync his 2 left feet with Mrs. Flores's salsa and laughed so hard mid-turn he had to sit down. The painter stood with her eyes closed, palms open, as if feeling for the breeze from a door she'd just opened on a canvas somewhere across town. We were a room of people who had stopped asking whether we had a right to be happy and had started practicing happiness in small, renewable ways. We were ridiculous. We were alive. The night unspooled in a way that let ordinary miracles pass as decorations. Someone taped the Ripple box to the front desk, and before we'd even found the good markers, a note appeared inside. I called her. We said hello. It was exactly big enough. Someone else wrote, "The basil finally took." Another said, "Job interview tomorrow. Borrowed tie, borrowed courage." I could feel the center changing even as I stood there, like a house that's been rearranged so many times it finally becomes the shape it always wanted to be. Eventually, people began to leave the way people do when the spell ends, by pretending it doesn't have to. Hugs, Tupperware lids searching for their matches, promises to bring recipes, to share playlists, to be here next Friday or the Friday after that. The building's hum quieted to its nighttime heartbeat. I stayed to turn off lights with Kyle. He did the checks, his mental clipboard clicking satisfied. At the office door, we paused. "You okay?" he asked. That question he knows how to make mean 100 things. "I am and I'm not," I said, and we both smiled because we're learning that's the answer most worth trusting. He bumped my shoulder with his. "You're not going to stop, are you?" "Breathing?" I teased, because deflection is an old coat I sometimes still put on. "Helping," he said, not letting me wriggle free. "And the other thing." "What other thing?" "Letting yourself be helped," he said, and then had the grace to look down at his shoes, like he'd just violated some municipal code on sincerity. I thought of the card in the drawer with my handwriting on it, including my own. "I'm trying," I said. "If you see me forgetting, remind me that I wrote it down." "I'll staple it to your forehead," he said sweetly. And then we turned off the last light, and the lobby sighed that particular sigh of a place that knows it will be full again soon. Outside, evening had arranged itself with a precision I'm not used to thanking. The temperature had decided to be kind. The sky wore that thin band of late light that makes everything look slightly better than it is, which is its own mercy. I pushed the door open and stepped into a town that had begun naming its own weather out loud. On the steps, the shy teen was deep in conversation with the kid from after school, both of them laughing about something in a way that made the laugh a rope between them. Across the street, the painter walked in the direction of home, canvas tucked under her arm like a loaf of bread somebody would be very glad to eat. At the bus stop, the man and woman I'd watched for months stood the comfortable distance of people who have stopped measuring. A girl in a yellow dress, an actual yellow dress, bright as an egg yolk, stood with 3 friends pointing at the sky like a planetarium had been installed in the firmament while we were busy with casseroles. Mr. Alvarez, plugging nothing into nothing, showed a boy how to wrap a cable, so it never fights you. Neighbors clustered, not in cliques, but in constellations. Small knots of conversation expanding and contracting as people drifted in and out. Someone I didn't know set a bouquet on the blue-railed porch 2 doors down from the center. A passerby stopped, read the tag, smiled like she'd been seen from a better angle. I stood there on the top step with my key in my hand and realized a very simple thing I had somehow been waiting to be told. This is mine too. Not the town, not the people, not their dreaming, but the belonging, the right to use the word our without apologizing, the right to say my life out loud and have other lives answer. Behind me in the office drawer, my first written dream waited with the rest, equal and unremarkable, which is to say holy. Tomorrow someone would open the wood, read a handful, write a handful, and carry the invisible work of strangers in their pockets like smooth stones. Tomorrow there might be a new ripple note from a person whose basil had bolted, but who learned to love the flowers anyway. Tomorrow the teen would set a song on the playlist that we didn't know we needed until it began. I put the key in my pocket. I took the steps slowly, the way you walk down from a place you want to remember in your legs. On the sidewalk, I fell into stride with Mrs. Flores, who was humming something old and cheerful, and the tune braided itself with the sound of distant laughter, the click of a bicycle chain, the soft brush of a broom on a porch 2 houses down. The evening was a quilt stitched by hands we knew and didn't know, a town pieced together from tiny, anonymous hopes that were no longer anonymous. Not really. Not when we had decided to keep looking at one another with that particular light that says, I see the dream you dared me to see. At the corner, someone had chalked 3 words in big, messy letters. We keep going. The chalk dust clung to the air like a promise. I stepped through it and into the kind of night that makes you say thank you without choosing who to say it to, because the answer is everyone. I walked home under string-light constellations and windows that glowed like open books. listening to the gentle murmur of a place that had learned how to tell the truth of itself in small, ordinary sentences. And I carried, warm against my ribs, a life that finally felt like it belonged to me, stitched with the same humble thread I had been knotting for months, strong enough now to tug me forward. "Begin," the painter had said to her canvas. "Begin," the teen song said every Friday. "Begin," the chalk wrote at the corner. I think the drawer had been saying it all along in the way it opened, quietly, the way a hand does when it starts to hold. And that ends tonight's meditation. You're welcome to stay for a bit longer if you like. Have a beautiful night. Until next time.